In this session, what we will do is we will understand running profiles with an example, and at the same time we will do an end-to-end web application where you have a web application, will generate a source for web application and then generate the var file, see the contents of the var file, and we'll deploy this var file into a application server. Say for instance, currently I have Tomcat in my system, so we will all download Tomcat and then we will upload our var file into Tomcat and see the web application live. So from source to making an application live, we will try to see the application from end to end in this class. That will give you more understanding about what is source and how do we make things live. Okay, so before that, yesterday I was explaining you in the previous session I was explaining you the concept of build profiles. Profiles can be per project, per user or globally. So if it is per project, we will set it in the pom.xml. If it is per user, we will set in the settings.xml in the .m2 folder. If it is global, then we have a settings.xml. In the Maven installation, we have a conf folder. In that configuration conf folder, you will have settings.xml. So any global changes will happen at settings.xml. The best example is your repository URLs. What is your repository to fetch your artifacts? And where do you want to publish artifacts, internal team artifacts? Those repositories will be configured in settings.xml. When we actually discuss repositories, at that time I will show the change in the global settings. User level settings, things like where is your Maven installation, where is your local internal cache, do you want to put it in C drive or D drive, where is it? So all these things can be set in your user level settings. And project level settings, example, which Java version you want to compile, okay, what are the property files to be used in testing environment, properties to be used in production environment. These are the changes which happen for a project from environment to environment. So version changes, environment changes, all those things for a particular project will be maintained in pom.xml. So three things: project level, user level and globally. So we have also taken and seen couple of examples yesterday. So we'll run one. This typical example is very useful for you in multiple ways. One, here using a plugin called, we have seen compiler plugin, we have seen var plugin. Now this is an ant run plugin. If you use this ant run plugin, you can actually run ant tasks inside your pom.xml. Suppose you join a company where there is a block which is running with ant. You don't want to, it may be, while it is creating troubles for you in converting it to Maven, you don't actually need to worry too much about it. Using ant run plugin dependency, you can set in the tasks, you can set whatever task you want to run. So Maven also can run ant tasks directly using the plugin ant run. Okay. So now what I will do, I will configure this plugin. I will create a profile called test, and in that I will try to run an ant task. So whenever I run Maven with this test profile, then only this will run. Similarly, you can create another profile with production, and you can run that with that profile with profile name as PROD or production. Then you will see that using same pom.xml with a different profile name, I am able to do different things. That's something which I will show to you now. So here, this is my sample pom. You know this very well. Group ID, artifact ID, version. The packaging type is jar file. So the output of this process is a jar file. Then this is the name of the app. Similarly, you can see here I have set a profiles tag, okay, where I have defined a profile called test. Similarly, say I can define a profile called production. So I just defined a profile, a typical profile. We have an ID, then we'll have some action to do something, be it checking environment variable, be it putting your Java compiler plugin here, and source as 1.4 you can set, source as 1.5 you can set. So when you run with that profile, that particular Java version is used. That is the best example for explaining profiles. You will have legacy, you will have systems with you need to sometimes support your application on 1.4, on 1.5, and on 1.6, on latest 1.7. So you may be required to support your application on multiple Java versions. If you are little familiar with Java, you will know that in 1.5 certain generics are implemented. In 1.0 certain new things are implemented. So you will extend your application, developers will extend the application with new things. But people who are still using 1.4 will not be able to run your version applications. So you need to compile your application with 1.4 and give to the 1.4 users. Okay, if you compile with your application with 1.5 and you give it to 1.4 people, they cannot do. There is no, see, if I am running 1.5, if you give me 1.4, it will work. But if I am running 1.5, if you give me 1.6, it won't work. Because I have installed 1.5 with me, you are giving me an application which is validated from 1.6 onwards. So where is the guarantee that it will run on 1.5? But while on the other hand, if I am using 1.5, if you give me an application built on 1.4, yes, 1.5 is backward compatible to 1.4. So if I am having 1.5 with me, you are giving me 1.4 application, it will work. If I am 1.6, if you give me 1.4 application, it will work. Because to a large extent, backward compatibility is maintained. It means if I am on a higher version, if you give me a lower version, it will work. But if I am on lower version, if you give me a higher version, it won't work. Because you will be implementing a lot of new things, common sense. You will be implementing a lot of new things in your higher version, and unfortunately I am on lower version, so it may not work. That is why we need to ensure, suppose if I have 100 customers, some 20 customers is on 1.4 compatibility, some another 70 are on 1.5 and some 10 are on 1.6. I need to give them artifacts built on correct Java version. Then only it will be working for them. That is why I need to maintain profiles. Now here I have set multiple profiles. One is a profile test, which is actually doing something. Here the goal is not about what it does, but we want to do certain things in pom.xml on a switch and certain things on pom.xml on a different switch. So now what I will do, I will say Maven. So I want to run this test, and then I will pass my profile as -p stands for profile. And then I will say -p test. So when I say this, what happens? It will continue to run. Test is a cumulative phase which will take care of validation, compilation, and then test. Right? Build phases. Build phases are cumulative. So now what it does? It starts scanning for projects. It does compilation. Then it runs the test cases, and then you can see the echo statement. I have just placed the echo task in my profile. So it has just done the echo. What you see here, this is actually a ANT plugin. So what can we do with an ANT plugin? We can run ANT tasks directly inside a pom.xml. So I have run a hello task. So when I run with profile test, what it does Maven test, like compiling, running test. In addition, if we have specified any action in the profile called test, that action it will perform. Similarly, if I run with prod, now we will start doing things. I have another profile named as prod. So you can see what is the product, what is the profile is saved. Yes, test. Sorry. Execution phase is test. So I can also mention when I want it to be executed. That is called phase. You know this phase well, right? Compile, test. So by default, if I don't put any phase, it will take as compile. So if I want certain things to be executed at different phases, I can even mention the phase in my pom.xml. Oh, this is test profile. Okay, let me run production. Now you can see echo in production. This is executed. Suppose I want this profile to be active during compile phase. I will mention here compile. So the phase is compile. So this will be active. This profile will be active during a compile phase. So if I say now same command after test, ideally profile must run. But here only tests are run, no profile is run. If you see above, you will see that after test cases, any profile, specific profile is listed, that profile will be executed. So here profile is not run because I am not, the phase is not matching. And then if I say Maven compile -p production, then you can see that after compilation is done, then this phase gets executed. You can see now Antron plugin is on after compile phase. So this is called activating profile based on a phase. Here the profile is executed based on a particular phase, and whatever we want, whatever plugin we put. So at a particular phase, that plugin also will be executed along with the phase. So defaultly compile is executed here, and along with compile, whatever actions we mention in this particular PROD profile, that profile will be executed. So what I will be doing now is I will pick up a web app. Okay, and then I will run this web app. I will run the build for this, generate this, deploy it onto a tomcat and see how it works. So before I go for this, we need to pick up archetype for a web app. So let me just, I will say MVN. So we have created archetypes file. So let me just check that archetypes file. If I have any direct simple web app, here you see web app for 1.3, Java 1.3 web app supporting Java 1.4, web app supporting Java 1.6. So let me pick this 440. That will be my archetype ID. So now I will say Maven archetype :generate and press enter. So it's generating project in interactive mode. So it has given choose a number. It's saying 251. Let me give 440 as my number. Version 1.5. Okay. Any number. It's asking me to choose 8. Let me choose 8. So it's downloading couple of things. It's asking for group ID. Let me say org.maven training. That's my group ID. Artifact, let me name it as my web app. Any name I can give. This group ID will be typically based on your company. Suppose you are in Cisco, com.cisco. Based on whichever company it will be commercial. If you are, it will be com, then it will be dot followed by name of the company, general package convention. Then you will have name of application and so on. enter, snapshot, okay, package, yeah, let me retain this package. It's asking me to confirm group ID, artifact ID, version, yeah. So it created me a folder structure for my web app. So my web app. Here I have source, pom.xml, in source, I have Java files, then I have some web app here, I have some index.jsp, you know, typical web application, right? You will have, if you remember, I have just discussed this couple of sessions ago. If you pick up a typical web application, it will have three tiers. One is the database level, where you have, just imagine a mobile application for your understanding. So you'll have a mobile app where you have the user, where you have mobiles listed, that's view for you, and then when you click on mobile, it will go and fetch the details about that mobile specification and all that. So how does this work? So you have a database where all the information about mobiles, product ID, then product description, cost, shipping approach, everything is stored in the database. Then you have a user UI designed which can list all the values, all the mobiles in a grid model or a tabular model. Then you have a engine in the middle which will actually take the request from the browser, go to database, fetch the result, and again convert into HTML and give it to browser. In a Java world, if you look at it, these pages are designed in JSP, and your backend processing is done with servlets, and your database is typical SQL Server or MySQL or Oracle. So servlet is intermediate, where it takes request, go to database, get the result, parse it, give it again back as HTML format. So you will have JSP's HTMLs as front end, then servlets will be your middleware processing the request to and from the browser, between browser and database, and you have a database layer where you actually store information about all the mobiles and their details. So this is typical application, web app. So we have got this application now. If you go to Java, then you will have this direct simple JSP page, no processing, so there won't be Java code, but structure is retained. Then if you see the pom.xml here, we are familiar with pom.xml, group ID, artifact ID, version. Here the packaging model is WAR. Any web application generally will be WAR file. If application is EJB type, if the application is EJB type, then we will have a bean model. Then we will have AR, but by default, if it's a web application, you can assume that the artifact is a WAR file. So you can see that there are a couple of plugins here. Maven compiler plugin. The interesting thing that you want to note it is the configuration. Here I have chosen source and target as 1.6 because the web application I have chosen is on Java 1.6. It will be here. Then here then you have Maven WAR plugin, which is used for building WAR file. So couple of interesting things here in the dependency.xml. So what I will do now is that, I will just go ahead and say a Maven package. Okay. This is because I have not moved to the directory where my application source and pom.xml are located. I am just giving me a package. I will download a couple of things required for generating a Java based web application supported on 1.6 layer. And once it download, where it will host, where it will put them. It will putting them in my users .m2 local internal repository, which works as cache for me. So it's downloading. While it's downloading, meanwhile, because we will deploy it onto tomcat, if you do not have tomcat in your system, just go ahead and download tomcat. So how do you download tomcat? If you see here Apache Tomcat, just click on it. I think it would be around 6 or 7 MB. It happens in less than 30 seconds. So what will you download here? You just download Tomcat 7. Let's go with the latest version always. So what will you download? You download the exe, binary distribution. Okay, the binary distribution, you go ahead and install 32-bit or 64-bit Windows Service Installer. So it will be an installer which sets everything for you. Go ahead and download this installer. So once you install, during the installation phase, it will ask you for some ports, HTTP port and all that. If you have other applications running on 8080, you may be typically required to give a different port number, 8090 or something, so that Tomcat will be running on a different port other than 8080. Because IIS also chooses 8080 as default port. Hudson, all these people chooses 8080 as the default port. So sometimes if you will get a port conflict, then you give a different port and proceed. So just go ahead and install the Apache Tomcat. Meanwhile, here you can see that the package is done, the compilation is complete, tests are run. Then here you can see that the war file is getting built and war file is generated. So if I go to my webapp, I have a target folder. In that I have my webapp.war has been generated. Now what I need to do is I need to deploy this into my Tomcat. Meanwhile, I will recommend you strongly to install Tomcat in your systems. So while installing Tomcat, if some of you get a problem, that problem would be most likely because 8080 port would be consumed by someone else, like Hudson or IIS in some cases. So in that case, you will not be able to run your Apache. In that, what you need to do is go to Tomcat, go to your Tomcat installation folder. There you will have a conf folder. In that you will have a file called server.xml. In that server.xml, you will have a node called connector where protocol is HTTP. In that you will have a port number 8080. Just you change it to a different port, 809095, give any number here between 0 to 16,000. You can choose a number. Ideally give it in the series of 8000 and 9000 where most people will have firewalls open for those ports, most firewall policies. So choose in those lines. Change the value here. Just start your Tomcat service. Go to services. .msc, services.msc, type in your run. If you open services, that's nothing but services.msc. Then you will see the list of services. You will find that Apache Tomcat is also a service which is started. Just restart this service. So you have restarted this service. Now go to your browser. HTTP localhost. Instead of 8080, you give whatever port you have chosen. Then it will automatically open the Apache default console for you. If you want to upload any artifacts, any war files are like that into Tomcat, then you need to open your Tomcat manager. To open your Tomcat manager, you should have a manager role. Okay. So you need to put that information in a file called tomcat users.xml. In a file called tomcat users.xml. It will also be in the configuration folder. Below the server.xml, you will have tomcat users.xml. So here you need to tell, there will be a lot of examples here actually. If you want to use manager UI, you have to say like this: user, you can give any username, you can give any password, and you can give the role here. Only if you give that role of manager GUI, so it will open the manager interface for you. From manager interface, administration screen, you can actually upload your WAR files. So you need to add this role in your tomcat users.xml. So you can do it like the way I have done. See, if you don't want to do like this also, if you click on tomcat manager, okay, I'll just log out. Can I log out? Close the console, open again. Good. So HTTP see, it will ask me for username and password. Just imagine if I have not given anything. So it will say unauthorized, and clearly it will tell, please examine the file conf/tomcat_users.xml. If you want to add manager GUI role to a username tomcat with a password blah blah blah, add this. So clearly it is giving you an indication that you need to add this role, add this user to your tomcat users.xml. So directly you can copy this and paste in your conf/tomcat users.xml. So you need not type seeing the screen, you can directly copy it from there and place it in your tomcat users. You can define role once and you can define any number of users. Just apply that and ping me if you are able to log into the tomcat manager. You will be seeing something like this. Some of you are getting the problem that when you are trying to save this tomcat users.xml with the change here, it is giving unable to save the file. If it is giving that, then you have two reasons. One, you stop the service, stop the tomcat service. How do you stop that? Go to services.msc and then you stop it here. Later you can restart it. Okay, so stop it and save it. Most cases it will be saved. If not, the second reason would be, if you are using any Windows Server or Windows 7 later version of Windows, then you may have the permission issues. So go to the folder of Apache installation, go to properties, go to security, and here you choose administrator or user and ensure that edit it and you give all permissions here. For user, all permissions; for administrator, all the permissions. Just ensure that we have all the permissions to write to this folder. That's why you are not able to save it. So either you have security issue with your folder or with this service. Two issues. At least 99% cases, after you give permissions to the tomcat folder or after restarting services, you will be allowed to log in. So once you see this web application manager here, web application manager screen, Then in that you will have a section called deploy. In that deploy, you can choose the war file that you want to deploy. So choose your war file. In our case, it is webapp 1.0 snapshot.war. Open it and then you say deploy. If you click on deploy, then you will see that that snapshot in the list of applications. Directly you can open it in new tab. So you will see that it's a JSP page and you will see the hello world written here. So what we have done successfully now is that you have some source code. Okay, we have some source code. See, we have some source code with some JSP pages and Java code. Okay, it is somewhere anywhere. There is a Maven installed there. With the Maven, we have built this source code. We got this war file. Even I can send this war file to you now in mail. You can put this war file in your Tomcat. Now you see the application live. So that is how, from a source to hosting a web application. This is the entire cycle. Build it. You have the source code. We generated the structure with Maven archetype. Then we build it. We generated war file. Then we have a Tomcat installation in our deployment servers. We copy this war file to the deployment server and we open Tomcat there. We deploy it from the manager console. You have the application running on your deployment server. You can have the application running on the UAT server. Probably next session we will try to deploy with Maven itself. That's something which will be even interesting. Once you have Tomcat running, what we can do is, how can we update our pom.xml so that it will automatically deploy into my Tomcat. I don't need to log into Tomcat. Okay, I don't need to click on deploy. I don't need to upload my war file. I don't need to do all these things. In Maven only I have a plugin for deployment. I use this deploy, let the artifact go there and get deployed into the Tomcat installation. So how to do this automatically, that we will pick it up in the next session.